It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all over social medias at Around the 412. If you're not watching the show on there already, go check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like the video. Also, follow us anywhere you can listen to the podcast as well, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or the other day, actually, I was looking through all of the analytics of where we can find podcasts. Dude, there's way more than I actually thought there were. There's like 40 different places that would get brought up, and some of them don't even seem like podcasting apps. But yeah, follow us wherever you listen to the show as well. Leave a 5-star review. Check out the description of each and every show where you can see all the links to our great sponsors as well. One of them I want to shout out because my mom, if you saw my stories on my social medias, my mom got me a great Father's Day gift.
Oh, yeah.
It's the You're Killing Me Smalls is on my shirt, and then my daughter Sydney, her shirt just says Smalls. So everything Custom Designs made that, so she can make something fun like that for you guys too. So go check that out. Just a little quick shout out. You'll hear about more later. But yeah, we still have the golf outing to talk about as well, which, I mean, it's coming up close. June is, I feel like, flying by. So you were only like
less than 2 months now.
Less than 2 months now to the golf outing. So Smitty will fill you in on how you can get more involved with that.
The Horace Nickel Memorial Golf Outing taking place at Fox Run Golf Course. That is Saturday, August 16th at 9 a.m. So the event itself is August 16th, but you got to register your foursome by July 5th. So we mentioned 2 months until the event, but less than 1 month. Actually, just a couple weeks.
About 2.5
registered for the event, which kind of reminds me, I'll parlay that off this. So check that out in the description, by the way. The link will go to the Facebook page, which will take you to the registration from there. Exactly 2 weeks from the night of recording this, Rocking Around the 412 kicks off. It'll be July 1st in 2 weeks. And that means the event's going to kick off our baby, our Christmas mission that we do every year. Obviously going to be super excited about that. I will say, I literally was just talking about this with you. I tweeted how burnout that I've been. I don't know that this is going to necessarily help that. A lot of focus, obviously, time, energy goes into that, but it's for a very good cause. And I wouldn't change that for the world. So I'm excited to put forth the effort that it requires to do that. But yeah, 2 weeks from today, we will be kicking that Christmas mission off with a GoFundMe page. And then a lot of stuff has been happening, honestly, with the Rock Around the 412 that isn't even like necessarily related to the GoFundMe, which is great. Like, really, as many kids as we can impact, that's at the end of the day, the goal that we want to accomplish. But ever since doing this stuff with the East Rochester Salvation Army and like people taking tags from there and just doing that on their own and then bringing the stuff back to Kaylee and I to deliver to there, it's one, hard to keep track of the actual like financial part of things because we're not going to ask the people how much they're spending on stuff. And also, like, you know, the GoFundMe, it hasn't been as prevalent, but still it's a way for us to get the means to go out and shop if you guys don't want to do that on your own. So that will definitely be added to the description within the next couple of episodes of the Around the 412. But this is the Around the 412 Steelers show. Actually, a piece of news to talk about coming out last night. Again, time of recording this, so 2 days ago. DeShon Elliott extended by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Tyler, I got to tell you, well, one, I love this. And there's very few times where you'll see a fan base universally be on board with a move, but I haven't seen like a single negative reaction to this extension. The second part of it is I'm very surprised by it because I had heard a lot of smoke that DeShon Elliott was upset because he was pretty much told that he was not going to get an extension this summer and he wanted one. And then I looked at the number that the Steelers got him at, and I'm thinking, this is easy business here for the Steelers. Like, if anything, I think it's DeShon Elliott that shouldn't have signed this deal, but I'm not going to tell a player what to do or anything like that. He feels very comfortable here. I'm not calling him a journeyman, but this is his fourth NFL stop, and he had his best season of his career. So maybe he just feels like this is the place where he wants to be. He felt like he should have been, and feels like this is where he wants to close it out. So super happy about this. I think it's a win all the way around. But like, if you're making me pick which side comes out on the surplus here, I think this is just a really good deal for the Steelers.
It is. Whenever the deal got tweeted out last night, as of recording this 2 nights ago, I was able to say, like, this is a bargain for the Steelers. I think looking at what the total money is plus the guaranteed money, I just think it's an overall bargain for the Steelers at the position. The value that you got from him last season in the sure tackler you got from the safety position, but
30th
one of,
highest
if not the
safety,
best tackler. Yeah, I was going to say one of, if not the best tackler on the team last year when it comes to the defense. The pairing that he makes with Minkah Fitzpatrick in that safety room, and now you're going to have that pairing for the next couple of years after this. I just think this is an overall win. This is something that I think the fan base was pining for, even though, like you just mentioned, it was questionable whether it was actually going to happen or not, that he was upset that it might not be happening. But the fact that it did happen and that the number that it did, I think Nick Farabaugh said that when this kicks in, it's going to be like the 30th highest paid safety, which, I mean, for what DeShon Elliott was bringing last season, I think is a great value for the Steelers to get him at. So like you're saying, like, you're never going to tell a player like what to sign, what not to sign. Obviously we think that he could have potentially gotten more because of what he brought to the Steelers in 2024. But man, I just think this is a great signing for the Steelers. And you're right. I don't think that anybody is really being negative about it. Actually, the only negative comment I saw was actually, I think it was either a Browns or a Ravens fan that was commenting on one of the posts about DeShon Elliott, basically saying that it was bad. But no Steeler fan I have seen is saying that this is a bad deal. Everybody seems to be pretty excited about this. And even the guys that, I mean, not to say that the general fans' opinion is not as weighted as some others, but like even like some of the big hitters that like are more connected to the Steelers and I don't want to say quote unquote no more ball, like they are thinking this is a big deal as well and a great deal for the Steelers. And I just think that overall it's great news to have him locked up for the next couple of years, because you get him and Minkah, and that's another position that the Steelers are not going to have to worry about when it comes to next offseason.
Yeah, that's the bigger picture part of this that I kind of want to expand on. The other thing that I wanted to mention, you mentioned how short of a tackler, literally the lowest missed tackle percentage since they started keeping track of it, according to Next Gen Stats last year. So the most short tackler in NFL history, basically, for one season, DeShon Elliott, and parlays that into a new contract extension. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about what he was able to do in 2024. I will say it's funny that this happened last night, because I was on a podcast yesterday, Steelers Sanctuary, and we were talking about players that could disappoint. And I said, I think context is necessary here, just because I don't think he's going to be able to completely replicate his 2024. But I said DeShon Elliott, and then he signed an extension the same night. So I love DeShon Elliott. I still think he's going to be fantastic, and I think he's a great fit for what the Steelers do schematically. It was just more so with the context of what I think he now has these heightened expectations within the fan base of the caliber of player that he is. And I think we're going to look back on it and say 2024 DeShon Elliott, like that was the best season of his career, like previously or going forward. So it's kind of low hanging fruit for me to say that.
Well, you said it. You said it. He was the best tackler of all time.
Yeah, how can he not? There's not really a way to improve upon what he did in 2020.
It's kind of like TJ Watt's like 2021. Like it's all downhill from here, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll see. But you mentioned something else that was very interesting. It checks a box for them in terms of draft needs, because if he would have been heading into free agency, I think that kind of changed things. I think we would have potentially been looking at safety as a position that they would have needed to fill through the draft, or, I guess bringing in another free agent. But that now checks that box, that I think is very important, because we know that they need ample draft capital to be able to move up for their quarterback and obviously continue to fill out the rest of the roster. So I want to parlay that into a question, not about DeShon Elliott, but are there other candidates here that we should be looking to do the same thing with? We've talked about Calvin Austin III already. Jaylen Warren, I think, could be thrown into that same bucket as well, who's just playing on that RFA tender this year. And then, of course, TJ Watt's completely separate conversation, in my opinion, and that's like, we know that one's going to get done. The other two, I think, are very much in question. But in your mind, should they be, or should they be going the DeShon Elliott route, where it's like, these are two guys that you would like to keep around for a few years, and they also make it so it's not a position that you got to look at in the draft?
So with TJ Watt, I mean, we fully expect that one to be done at some point. I'm not really worried about that. And so to me, that doesn't really change it, that it would be addressed in the draft next year. And looking at the position as well, I just feel like edge rusher is not something that they're going to be really keying on, knowing that they still have TJ and Alex Highsmith. They just added Jack Sawyer, and they have Nick Herbig still on that rookie contract for another couple years. So that one I'm not really concerned about. Wide receiver, that's going to be a talking point all offseason. I mean, we're not even through 2025 yet. We're not even to 2025 yet, excuse me, and we're still talking about wide receiver. So that's just going to be an ongoing discussion until something happens prior to this season, if something happens prior to this season at the position. But even still, I feel like that doesn't necessarily close the door on something to happen in the 2025 offseason, whether that is free agency or the draft. I feel like draft is more likely next year than free agency, considering that they didn't take one in this year's draft. And looking at what you have moving forward, we can't really go ahead and say that they're necessarily going to add somebody, or we can't at least have this conversation thinking they're going to add somebody in August. And so looking at what they currently have in the wide receiver room, Robert Woods, 1-year deal. He's not going to be on the Steelers in 2026. And Calvin Austin III, we've talked about him as an extension candidate with the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's an opportunity there to be had in considering if he does have a good 2025, that makes that decision a little bit easier as well, just to see that it wasn't a flash in the pan for 2024, if he can grow on that in 2025. But I feel like even if you do extend Calvin Austin III, wide receiver is still on the market in 2026 for the draft. I don't think that you're going to get enough out of Calvin Austin to say that you are comfortable at the position where you're suddenly not feeling that you need to draft one. And I'll say even draft one early. I still think that going into the draft as of right now, and this is barring any drastic changes to the roster, I feel like there is going to be a discussion similar to this year where wide receiver is going to be in contention very early on in the draft. Obviously, the big discussion is going to be around the quarterback, but I feel like once we get to the actual draft night, and you look past quarterback, wide receiver is going to be near the top for the Steelers want list and when it comes to the draft. So to me, that's not going to change a whole lot. But other positions, there's not a ton that I look at and think that there's a ton of, as far as like extension candidates, because for me, a position that you would look at to say for the draft necessarily for next year is corner. I mean, you do have Joey Porter Jr. lined up. You would hope that Corey Trice takes a step this year. I know the Steelers are hoping that Corey Trice takes a step this year, but you after Darius Slay, you're probably going to be replacing a corner unless something like what we talked about last week, wherever the Steelers trade for Jalen Ramsey. If something like that happens, that changes the whole conversation. But as of right now, I feel like corner is definitely a conversation that to be had for the next year's draft, but I feel like an extension is not going to be what stops that, or it maybe makes it less prudent. I feel like the progression.
No, I mean, next off season is when
something that's going to be changing that conversation.
Next off season is when Joey could get an extension, but like, yeah, that wouldn't happen this off season, obviously. So yeah, I think that would be one to look at there. Yeah, I actually have several thoughts on both Calvin and Jaylen, but we'll talk about them in a second, right when we come back. I like them. They're both very good players. Not sure I'd categorize them as this, but I like both players. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. And we are actually running a giveaway currently of a Game Changers design. That Aaron Rodgers one did drop officially. So we're giving one of those bad boys away. Going to pick a winner on July 1st. So a lot of things to look forward to on that day. So go over to our Twitter. It's our pinned tweet. Repost it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tweet us that screenshot. You'll be eligible to win an Aaron Rodgers Game Changer shirt. And if you don't win, link will be there, and you can save yourself $10 using code AT412. I think these are two very different things. I think for me, Calvin is somebody that I would want to approach about a contract extension regardless, because I think at worst, he's a really good wide receiver 4 and obviously contributes in the punt return game. I think that, there's the capability there for him to be a wide receiver 3. And if he's not going to be back in the fold, there's a real possibility that you're looking for multiple receivers next offseason as opposed to just one guy. Like, okay, let's say that they don't add somebody significantly this year. Actually, we can talk about that in a second. Something I heard over the weekend. Let's say they don't add somebody significantly this year, or it's like a 1-year rental, right? And then Roman Wilson, and I can't stop. Your reaction to that was just hilarious. I can't stop smiling. But Roman Wilson doesn't take a step forward this year. He's not a contributor. And then say that happens and Calvin Austin walks in free agency. The state of this wide receiver room somehow, some way is actually worse than the previous 2 years. Like, so to me, Calvin Austin is somebody they should want back in the fold regardless. Now, the price point is obviously going to be important here. Looking at some of the other contracts, it's tough because, like, does one player like a Dimey Brown getting $10 million or Tutu Atwell with the Rams also making $10 million this year? Does that dictate what Calvin should be getting? Or because to me, he's more like a $7 or $8 million player with what he brings to the table, I think. It's tough though, because if I'm his agent, I'm looking at those 2 contracts and saying, I mean, tell me this guy shouldn't be making at least what these guys are based off his production. And, they'd have a case for sure. But that's where it gets a little bit tough for me. Like, are you going to give this guy a multi-year deal at $10 million and invest in another wide receiver early? Like, it's so I think that one's going to be tough, but you at least should have that conversation. Like, the fact that they haven't approached him even, or at least the time that Allen had asked him about it, like Calvin's like, yeah, no, we haven't had a discussion at all. It hasn't been on my mind. Maybe it will when they get to training camp. I would certainly like for it to be, because you have no idea what he's thinking. Maybe he would sign something right now for, again, $8 million or less per season.
Well, I'm looking at wide receivers that are in that price range. Like, and you mentioned like the $10 million mark is the high end. That maybe it could be some names that you mentioned: Dimey Brown, Tutu Atwell, Josh Palmer, also on the Bills, also making $10 million. A little above that, Jacoby Myers making $11 million. That's something that somebody last season we talked about wouldn't mind seeing in Pittsburgh. Yeah. If you start going down from that and look at some of the other players, a lot of older players like Adam Thielen, 8.75, Curtis Samuel, $8 million. Marquise Brown is making $7 million.
But he's coming off a year of not playing. So
Kendrick Bourne, $6.5 million. Brandon Cook, $6.5 million. Juwan Jennings, $6 million. So I mean, I would say that like that would be a good range, like between like $7-8 million. Like, and that's, I think, something that the Steelers should be comfortable with, not just because of the player that Calvin is, but I mean, we've talked about it so much. Look at the state of the room and look at where it could be if he decides to walk. So that one seems more prudent.
And those guys you mentioned are, other than Jacoby Myers, which is a great deal at $11 million. Those guys are no higher than the number 3 option in their passing attack, which is what Calvin is. And probably 4th by the and if Roman Wilson takes like some massive leap, it's possible he's even lower. You got Pat, you got DK, you got whoever else you're going to slot in there, whether it is somebody this year that ends up being a longer term thing or somebody that they draft early next year. Like, he's going to get pushed down the pecking order a little bit, but like those are very fair values. And again, adding in what he brings into the punt return game, I think is a little bit tougher because a lot of those guys you said aren't like also the primary punt returner for their team, where he's adding some value there. But yeah, I think they should feel comfortable $8 million or less with giving him the cap should continue to go up. Like I'd have no issue with them giving him like a 3-year, $24 million contract with like 12 of it, 13 of it guaranteed, something like that.
About half of it.
Like a year and a half of it guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I think that would be a smart move for the Steelers to shore up that position. And doing that contract is not going to take you out of the running for a higher draft pick on a receiver in the draft either.
Right. Jaylen Warren's different. They just spent obviously a relatively high pick on a running back. Their second pick that they made in the draft, 3rd round pick overall. And that position's just so different. I would have liked to have signed, like, even with the Caleb Johnson in the fold, I'd love to have Jaylen Warren here for 3 years. like including this year, 2 additional years. I don't know what those talks were like. They clearly had to have had some conversation for him to sign the RFA tender. I don't know if there was ever a conversation about him being here long term, or if there was just like this mutual, like, hey, you're going to play out this year and then we're going to let you go. I don't know, but I think he's a great fit for what Arthur Smith wants to do along with Caleb Johnson. And like, I think there's room for both. Like, you know how I feel about Caleb Johnson as a player. I think he's phenomenal. And I think he's a great fit for what they want to do. I feel the same way about Jaylen Warren. And as high as I am on Caleb Johnson, we haven't seen it yet. Like, we got to acknowledge that. Like, it's all projection right now.
Even though it looks like he's in a Steeler uniform, it's not.
Right. And I think there's still obviously some questions about his ability to translate into a pass catcher at the next level, his ability in pass pro, which he seems to be taking on great. But like, again, we got to see it on Sundays. Those aren't questions for Jaylen Warren. So he's already proven he can do that. I'd love to see Jaylen Warren locked up for a couple more seasons beyond this year. But I'll be honest, I think that's probably the one that I would put it like least likely to happen. Unfortunately, I definitely see a world where Jaylen's here this year, and then they turn it over to Caleb Johnson. Maybe they bring Kenny Gainwell back for another year, depending on how this year goes. And then they'll look for somebody else, whether it's another mid-round draft pick or, another type of running back that fits the system in free agency that they're not paying that much money.
If you were to offer an extension for those 3 years for Jaylen, what would number figure would be looking at?
It's tough because I think he's a better player than what his box score looks like. Like, I think if you're Jaylen, that's probably the side that you're arguing. Like, that's what his agent is going to argue. You look at like the efficiency, the per touch, what he's been able to do. But if you're the Steelers, you're probably looking at it like, well, we planned on you having a much bigger role in 24, and you got hurt at the beginning of the year and did not look like the same player that we thought that we had seen in 22 and 23. I still, we talked about what, $7-8 million for Calvin. I think like, $7-8 million per season would be fine for Jaylen.
So if you put him in that range, I'm looking on over the cap right now. He would be in the same range as.
And I think he could. Yeah.
DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard, Tony Pollard.
No, that's probably. Yeah, that's. I feel like that's relatively fair.
Ramondre Stevenson makes 9.
Yeah. No. Yeah, but that's a bad. That was a stupid contract.
It's a stupid contract.
Oh, like that's the thing with pay and running backs. We've talked about this before, and like the league has kind of turned around a little bit. Like it's cyclical, and the running back, because of what the free agent class did last year, and then obviously with what Saquon did with the Eagles, kind of at the front of all that. Derrick Henry with Baltimore, Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. Who else had a really nice year? I mean, even Aaron Jones in Minnesota had a nice year. Joe Mixon in Houston played pretty well. Like, these guys actually like played well on their contracts.
Take one.
Well, no, that's why I said, yeah, he was at the front of it. I
mentioned him.
Yeah, I mentioned him and then Derrick Henry. But point of that being, if you're a bad team like the Patriots were, handing out that type of contract is the last thing you should be doing. All those other teams were good football teams. The Patriots handing out that type of money to a running back made no sense. And Ramondre Stevenson's not even like a very good one. So bad contract. Right. That's not how we should be basing the running back market off of. But I mean, if you're on the player side of things, I think you're going to be looking at things like that and arguing for more money than that guy. But I would feel better about, I mean, those players you said in that range are pretty decent players. DeAndre Swift didn't fit in great in Chicago. Chuba Hubbard had a nice year and then got that extension. So that was like a post-production contract, and that's what he got. So yeah, I still think, again, like 3 years, $21 million for Jaylen Warren on extension. I'd sign up for that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other players that are around Jaylen Warren on his current offer right now is $5.3 million. I mean, you got Devin Singletary at $5.5 million. Najee Harris, $5.25 million with the Chargers. $5.25 million for Jordan Mason in Minnesota. And then you got a bunch of rookies that are making higher money because they were higher draft picks. Austin Eckler at $4.2 million. So, I mean, yeah, I feel like you're getting good value out of, compared to like some of the peers, out of what he's getting paid right now. So paying him a little bit more compared to the other guys that we talked about, and I don't think that would be that big of a deal. But I feel like if you don't extend Jaylen Warren, it kind of puts you in a similar scenario that you were this year with running back. Like, obviously, you feel very confident with Caleb Johnson, but I don't think that you're looking at running back going into next year's draft and thinking just because you have Caleb Johnson that means you don't need to draft another one, because
and what if he doesn't have the type of year that we think he's going to have?
Right, exactly. And then I feel like that's a pickle that the Steelers don't want to get themselves into. So if there was another extension candidate, I think Jaylen Warren makes a lot of sense. You've seen the production. Obviously, with the health factor, you hope he stays healthy, but you've seen what he can do in the Steelers offense. He has value outside of just the box score too. So super efficient running back. That's a good one to bring up as far as an extension goes.
Do you think, Alan brought this up to me and I wanted your take on it. You look at like the middle tier free agents that Omar has brought in, like the DeShon Elliott's. It seems like he's been able to find surplus value there. They haven't taken many like big swings in free agency, but like year one of Patrick Queen, I would say he didn't live up to that contract, and that actually only is going to get more expensive. So hopefully he's better in year two. And like, it's hard for me to envision a world where DK Metcalf lives up to $30 million per year. Like, I think he's going to be a good player, but like, that's just the reality of it. That's why you have to get surplus in the draft and then like in the middle and lesser tiers of free agency, because let's just be honest, the best players in free agency get overpaid. And you just have to kind of accept that, because you're overpaying them to convince them to come to your football team. But Alan brought up that point, and I started thinking about it, like DeShon Elliott, Isaac Seumalo, Landon Roberts was great value for his deal. Even honestly, like that, the Landon Roberts part of this, the 2023 off-ball linebackers they brought in before they got hurt. Like, imagine if Holcomb and Quan Alexander also don't get hurt. Like, that room got ripped to shreds towards the end of the middle to end of the year.
It got ripped to shreds in like 2 weeks.
But like, when they were on the field together, they were very good. And I just wonder what that room would have been, because it seems like they were hits. Same with Seumalo, same with DeShon Elliott. I don't know. I think Omar's done we talked about the draft a lot because he seems to find good value there. But I think like in the lower tiers of free agency, he's finding value there as well. We'll see about like when they make a big splash, but I think that there's something to be said about that.
Do you think that they have any of those this year? I mean, when it comes to free agents, like the notable names that they brought in is like, obviously Darius Slay is probably the biggest one, but then you have Robert Woods, Mason Rudolph, and Aaron Rodgers, if you want to include those guys as well. But then you have guys like Brandon Eccles, Juan Thornhill, Malik Harrison. And I feel like some of the, we're fairly, I don't want to say down on Malik Harrison, but like unsure how the Steelers are going to use him. We'll see what Brandon Eccles is able to do.
I think fair or unfair to him, it's because we look at not having Roberts back and him and feeling like he was the replacement for that and why they let Roberts walk. I think Daniel Ekuwale and Thornhill would be the two that I'm looking at, because Thornhill's time in Cleveland was abysmal, but he wasn't healthy. If he's healthy, and if the effort's there, I think he could certainly provide surplus, and not just because of how well he'll play individually, but what he'll let them do schematically in 3 safety looks if he's, healthy and going to buy in. And then Ekuwale, like, he was a good player in New England. I don't think a lot of people knew who he was, but like, he was starting on that defensive line in New England, and he's a rotational piece, like depth piece now, who I believe is going to pretty easily make this room, and it's a good room. So those would be the ones I'm looking at. I'm curious about Eccles just because like he's not doing anything in the slot right now. And if he's strictly going to be a backup on the outside, I don't know. I mean, like, there's a world where he's playing behind all of Porter, Slay, and Trice, and like, how much is he even going to get on the field at that point? Who else do we? Mason at $4 million. That's a good deal for a backup. There's probably worse backups making more money than that. So that's completely fine with me.
Also mentioned Robert Woods. Like, I feel like Robert Woods is probably
he's making like the vet min though. Like that, because I mentioned him to Alan, and Alan's like, that's like even lower tier than what we're talking about. Like, if he ends up finding the fountain of youth, that'll be like a really good find.
Well, I feel like based solely off of projected production as far as how many times he's going to be open, like how much he's actually going to see the field.
Mm-hmm.
At least on June 17th when we're recording this, if they add another wide receiver, that might change my outlook. But with him being one of their top 3 wide receivers right now, I feel like that contract could be pretty good, bringing him in for free agency based off of the projection that he could have, just because of how much he might see the ball. But obviously, I want the Steelers to add another wide receiver before that happens and make him at least wide receiver 4 on the team. And I'm hoping that Roman Wilson takes a step and takes over, so maybe Robert Woods is actually wide receiver 5 on the team. But I don't know how many of those things I should bank on. The interesting one to me still is Malik Harrison. And like you said, it may be because it all happened so quickly with Elandon Roberts not being re-signed and then Malik Harrison being announced. And if that's the replacement, it just didn't seem good enough at the time. And to me, like, for what you were getting from Elandon Roberts, still doesn't. But at the same time, if what we talked about last week with Peyton Wilson is true, and if Cole Holcomb is coming back healthy and adding, I just don't know how much I can expect from Malik Harrison either.
He's also, Harrison's making more money too. Like, it's weird. It's weird that they made that decision, but I think it was because they were trying to, kill 2 birds with 1 stone and have him replace both Elandon Roberts and Tyler Medikevich in one fell swoop. We'll see. It's nothing against Malik Harrison. Certainly he's going to have a fair shot to earn a role on this team. And we've talked about that off-ball linebacker group and how it's going to be one of the real interesting ones to watch in training camp and stuff. I mentioned that I'd heard something about the wide receiver conversation over this past weekend, conversation that I had with somebody certainly well connected in that I trust. And we'll talk about that as soon as I tell you guys about Keith's Barbershop. Smitty from Around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keith at Keith's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keith's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keith's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. I think this team believes they're going to sign Gabe Davis.
So I'm not saying, I'm not trying to jump in right away, but actually I am. So does that mean that they're not worried about his injury?
I think that all the teams,
he left without a contract.
Right. And that's been the case with 3 other teams as well. Right. And I think they're all going to circle back in the summer. I think that there's a belief that by the time we get to, I don't know, like a couple weeks from now, they want to circle back and say, how's the knee doing? I think that's who Omar wants. And I think that that's who, like, they believe that they're going to land him over the Saints, Niners, and Giants. Those are the other teams that have brought him in. I think there's an internal belief that that's who the guy is going to be.
As long as the knee's healthy, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And
to me, that's a big if. And I think it's tough for me to bank on that. But I agree. Like, big if.
Like, if you get Buffalo Gabe Davis, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
But if you get Jacksonville Gabe Davis and you get injury Gabe Davis, I feel like the Steelers would be better suited off waiting to see what else happens. Because I don't feel like the Steelers should sign somebody just to sign them, if that makes sense. And I don't know that necessarily that's what they would be doing with Gabe Davis, but maybe I might be making this up, but maybe subconsciously the Steelers don't want to wait until August because of what happened last year and they got burned. Maybe they don't want it to happen and they end up with nothing again. But so they'd be willing to take on Gabe Davis even though the knee is questionable. But I just, if you're going to sacrifice production from what you'd be signing, I'd rather just wait and see what you can get in August whenever teams are making cuts and more willing to make trades because if they need to fill up roster spots.
Yeah, I keep saying this. I just think he's a better fit for the offense than he is player necessarily. Like, I think this is a really good fit for a healthy Gabe Davis to come into. Like, it's odd because he's an Arthur Smith type of receiver, but I'm not 100% sure how the fit is with Aaron. Like, this is the type of wide receiver. Well, I don't view Gabe Davis as necessarily a wide receiver too. This is the type of wide receiver too that Arthur Smith offenses have had in the past. But for Aaron, who, likes to go 5 wide a lot of the time, wins with guys that win quick and across the middle of the field, it's not necessarily a seamless fit there. I also just think like the Steelers are probably at the point where I don't want to say like take anybody, but when you're starving for talent, I don't know that you can be picky to the point where you're trying to get like the perfect piece for the puzzle. You kind of got to make a square peg fit the round hole with where this offense is with their skilled players. So I think that's part of the conversation too, is a healthy Gabe Davis. Are you going to realistically do better than a healthy Gabe Davis? Forget the pipe dreams of the Terry McLaurins, Brandon Ayuk's of the world. Realistic options, are you going to do better than a healthy Gabe Davis? And I think the answer to that's no.
I don't think so either, because I think a healthy Gabe Davis, like what you saw in Buffalo, like that would be comparable to what you'd be getting for trading for like a Dontavian Wicks. So I can understand that. I think, but I just think there is risk associated with that. But there's risk.
Very different player than Dontavian Wicks. But that's the thing too, is you're saying that, and I 100% understand why. That's a team that they've called about. They've actually like put an offer, but like they offered, I think it was, at least from what I've heard, I think they offered them a 5th for Dobbs or a 4th for Wicks. Green Bay shot both of them down.
They must have listened to our show.
But did we say that?
We said that. We said we'd offer a 4th for Wicks and a 5th for Dobbs because he's a expiring free agent.
He has one less year on his contract. Yeah, well, but I understand like Wicks is one of the easiest separators, and like that to me should be the more coveted skill set. I don't think Green Bay has any desire to move off of him, so I get that. Romeo Dobbs could potentially come free. I mean, meaning Green Bay, we wanted to part with him, not that he'd be free to acquire. We know that last year there was something that happened where he got suspended from the team for a little bit. Don't know. I'm not saying that's going to play into anything long term. He's also on an expiring deal, like we've mentioned. So I think he would be the one to watch there, but they don't have to do anything. Like Christian Watson's not going to play for a while. Towards ACL late last year. Savion Williams isn't even necessarily a receiver. Like they don't have to make a move within that receiver. If they view Savion as like just a gadget guy, they could list him as a running back. Christian Watson's not coming back until close to the trade deadline. They don't have to do anything right now. Like, why would you not? And they haven't seen Matthew Golden or Savion take a snap. So what's the from the outside? Yes, 100%. We should be pushing this narrative that they need to move one of these guys. Internally, what's the reason that they would? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that room shakes out 100%. But everybody that's saying they got to move a guy, I'd pump the brakes. I don't think that they have to, at least not until the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's very true. So that's a good point to bring up. Gabe Davis to me would be intriguing. It's just all comes down to health. But at the same time, and you kind of alluded to this, that the Steelers really don't have that many options to where they can be picky about what they're doing. Sometimes they just have to sign somebody. So if it ends up being Gabe Davis, obviously hope the knee's healthy, but even a injured Gabe Davis is still probably no worse than wide receiver 4 on this team.
And here's where the intrigue really comes in. He's the wide receiver version of Russell Wilson last year. Jacksonville's paying him. He's going to come for the vet men. Yeah, that is true. Why he's being coveted. Like, is he some hot commodity because of what he brings to the table? Not really. But you're getting a proven commodity, again, win healthy, for the minimum. And some other teams paying his salary. So I think that there's going to be at least the 4 teams that we've talked about here in play for Gabe Davis, if not more. I can't believe Buffalo hasn't been part of this conversation. because they keep acquiring slot receivers. They need somebody else on the outside, and that's obviously where Gabe Davis did it before. Granted, it was Brian Daboll as the OC, but that's where the Giants connection comes in and why he met with them. That's
Deion Coleman,
my
Joshua Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Laviska Shenault, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel.
Slot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The best one playing outside is probably, oh boy. I mean, Coleman has like this go up and get it type of skill set, but he doesn't separate well on the outside. Who was the second guy he said?
Joshua Palmer.
Yeah, maybe Palmer, but like
Khalil Shakir.
That's another guy. That's another guy making $10 million.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they have a bunch of slot guys. They need another guy on the outside. I'd keep waiting for Gabe Davis to end up just a reunion there, but that's my, for the time being now, prediction for what the Steelers
that's interesting news. That's interesting news, and I am not opposed to it. I'm just very wary of it, and I think it's fair to be wary of it. Obviously, the teams are too, because they haven't given a contract yet.
Yeah, I think it literally, I'm not saying that this is like every team having this exact same conversation, but I really feel like every team is just going to reach back out like right before training camp and see where that knee's at. So I think that makes sense, right? Like he'll sign with somebody, but be able to participate fully in training camp with whoever it is. So I think if it's going to end up being Gabe Davis, I would look at like the week of July 21st, 20th is Sunday. July 20th to 25th, somewhere that week would be the week that Gabe Davis signs, whether it's with the Steelers or somebody else. That's my prediction.
I like it.
Now, this was put out there. This is where we can wrap up still with the wide receiver thing. I had like completely missed this until Alan brought it up to me the day that this was talked about, that the Steelers had like actually reached out to the Jets about Allen Lazard. Like 100% we knew that was going to happen. Have you looked at the Jets wide receiver room though? Like, why would they trade out Allen Lazard? Not that I think he's some world beater, but he's probably their second or third best receiver.
You're true. Yeah, that's correct. Garrett Wilson, obviously number one.
Yeah.
And then they have Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds, Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, Malachi Corley, Irvin Charles, Brandon Smith, Xavier Gibson, and then you get into even more who are
like they have some young players that maybe they would want to give opportunities, but legitimately, if you were just saying like who were their best wide receivers, he's in their top three. Mm-hmm. So like if they're actually trying to do anything this year,
well, they have 3 UDFAs from this year's draft class. Mm-hmm. They do not, or Arian Smith was drafted this year.
Yeah.
So they've got 4 new, I mean, we'll see if the UDFAs even stick around, but they've got 4 new receivers that are competing for it. They got 3 free agents and then a bunch of other receivers that are kind of mid. Like Garrett Wilson is the only one that is really pops off the page. Everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about Josh Reynolds. I wanted him last year, but he's not a number 2 option in a passing game. Like, again, going back to, he's probably more of an Arthur Smith wide receiver, too, than anything else. Tanner Engstrand must like him. Had him in Detroit, obviously, when he was the QB coach for Jared Goff when Reynolds was in Detroit. So now he's the OC there under Glenn, and they wanted to bring him in. So, but, yeah, that's loftier than the role that I would want Josh Reynolds in, and probably Allen Lazard as well, but he's in their top 3 receivers for sure. So why would they move him?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
He took a pay cut this year, like a massive pay cut. He's making less than $5 million. I don't know. I don't see the point. I don't think they're going to trade him.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about their receivers at all.
And if you want to, if the goal is to try to figure out if Justin Fields is anything, you got to have as many weapons as possible.
That's true.
Again, not saying Allen Lazard's a world beater, but he certainly is.
He's someone
they're better with him than without him. With the rest of the
sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Looking at this now, Alan Lazard seems less likely than he's ever been to me.
Yeah. And the other part of it was like Alan Lazard saying he didn't want to be traded potentially. I don't know if you want to put stock into this, but or at least specifically the Steelers, because he loves playing with Aaron, but there's like this stigma surrounding him that he can only play with Aaron, and he wants to prove that he's a good player even away from him. Because like the splits are very drastic with and without Aaron Rodgers for Alan Lazard, but I mean that doesn't surprise me. But
I hope he's ready for 50% completion.
Woof. Yeah. You know how nothing against Justin Fields. I hope it goes well for him there.
Same.
I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to.
Well, I think it's New York. It is the New York Jets. That is where quarterbacks go to die. It doesn't matter what regime, doesn't matter what coach.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about the coaching staff for a second, because that to me is why I'm looking at it. I just mentioned Tanner Engstrand comes from Detroit. He's going to bring a lot of the same stuff that he learned under Ben Johnson there, which is like a lot of quick game, like you need top tier processing. Like this is not what Detroit did well is not what Justin Fields does well. So if they're going to try to do that same stuff with Justin, I think it's going to fail miserably. Like the anticipation throws, a lot of stuff over the middle. It's just stuff that Justin doesn't do well. Like it's why it was so odd to me that he was so coveted by them. Unless they're just going to completely reshape their offense in a way that I just like, what does Tanner Engstrand have in his bag that I didn't know about? Is the first time OC. I don't know. And I actually like him as a candidate, like an offensive coordinator candidate, because of the time spent with Ben Johnson. But it's just a weird quarterback for him to have, in my opinion. Granted, with what else was out, I mean, it would have been, I don't know if they could have sold a reunion with the Jets for Sam Darnold, but like that might have been the guy to covet in free agency for them.
Although outside of ownership and maybe GM, I don't really know. Is the Jets that Sam Darnold left even remotely the same as what he would be going back to?
GM's gone. Yeah, it's just the owner. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking from a fan base perspective, would have been receptive to it? Oh,
sure. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, New York Jets is where people go to, like, quarterbacks just go to die.
And we'll get a first look at it in week 1.
Since Joe Namath, who is one of, if not the worst Hall of Fame quarterback ever, has there ever been a good Jet quarterback?
Legitimately, I mean, this is I am an irrational fan of this guy. Chad Pennington is probably the second best. Right? Yeah, I mean, taking into consideration Mark Sanchez went to an AFC championship, but like individually, I think Chad Pennington was the better player.
I agree. I agree.
Brett Favre's time there.
The journeyman Vinny Testaverde. Yeah, I actually think that Chad Pennington might be.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else. We'll see what does or what doesn't come to fruition in terms of extensions or the ongoing pursuit of a wide receiver 2. I shouldn't even say wide receiver 2, just wide receiver in general.
Zach Wilson is the Jets' 10th, is in the Jets' top 10 passing yards leader of all time.
Where's Rodgers?
Rodgers is number 16.
I say he only played like
out of 120 passers, out of 120 quarterbacks.
That's insane.
He is 16th, and he only played 4 plays of one of the seasons.
One of his 2 seasons, yeah.
Yeah. Zach Wilson is number 10 all time in a Jets uniform. Sam Darnold is 8. Ryan Fitzpatrick is 9th. Boomer Esiason is 7th, Mark Sanchez 6th, Vinny Testaverde 5th, Chad Pennington 4th, Richard Todd 3rd, Ken O'Brien 2nd, Joe Namath 1st.
Illustrious history. All right. Anyways, as we wrap up on around the whatever the East Rutherford, New Jersey zip code is, or area code, I mean, not zip code.
Around the 201.
Hey, it doesn't sound too bad. Around the 201. All right. Anyways, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you are here on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Regardless of what platform you're watching or listening, go do the other that I said on the other platform. Please, it's absolutely free. Best way to support us. And we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Wherever you're watching or listening, in the description of the show, bunch of links talked about, obviously, our sponsors throughout the show. Game Changers, GameChanger.la or Pick6.la. Save yourself $10 using code AT412 at checkout. Bunch of cool designs on there and more. Also, we're running a giveaway right now on our Twitter at Around the 412 for an Aaron Rodgers Game Changer shirt. So go check that out. If you miss out on July 1st and don't win it, you can still go grab a shirt and save yourself $10 again using that code AT412. Talked about Keek's Barbershop. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Keek today. We're going to do a walk-in with Ashley or Tony. Old school vibe in there. You'll never see me getting these like 4 hairs that I still got cut anywhere else besides Keek's Barbershop. Then above Tyler right now, Marcelo Electric, our friend Brandon Marcelo, a.k.a. Boots, his small business, serving Beaver, Allegheny, Lawrence, and Butler County. Hit him up, 724-614-0611 to schedule your call, whether it's residential, commercial, or service calls. He can hook you up. He can help you out. The link below will take you to his Facebook page. Bunch of his work on there, his van that he just recently got redone. So go check him out. Hit him up if you need any help. Again, that is Marcelo Electric, 724-614-0611. But all the information down the link below as well. Then, as we talked about at the top, we'll talk about one more time here, the Horace Nicker Memorial Golf Outing going on at Fox Run Golf Course Saturday, August 16th at 9 a.m. You must register your foursome by July 5th, though, to take place. So, again, that's August 16th, but July 5th, you need to register by the link down below to the Facebook page. We'll take you to the Facebook page for the event, but the registration page is attached to that event page, so you can go from there. So, yeah, you're going to have to click a couple different links, but this is the best way to do it in terms of getting you all the information in one spot. So be sure to do that. Great cause, very near and dear to the hearts of us, obviously. It's transitioned from a softball event to now a golf event. Man, would it be wild if we were still doing softball? Yeah, man, it would be wild if we were still playing softball this summer. But it'll be a lot of fun. Excited to be a part of it. So be sure to check that out and attend if you can. Again, August 16th, Fox Run Golf Course. Anything else, Tyler?
No, I think that covers it. We're going to be really just hoping that there's some more Steelers news from now until training camp, because it's kind of like that dead period.
Hopeful for next week. If it's not next week, it will definitely be the following week. Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth on the podcast. He's a tough guy to get. So, when you don't have connections, you're constantly reaching out and saying, "Hey, would you mind doing the show?" And what the heck? I was messing with him. He was doing he did Breaking Bread with Donnie Football for the pilot episode of that or whatever.
Yeah.
And I texted, and it was like pre-recorded, and I knew that obviously, but I was messing with him because he's back in Boston for the summer. And I was like, "Oh, you tell me you can't do the podcast this week because you're busy, but you're out here breaking bread with Donnie's football." But he'll be on here in the very near future. So excited about that. Excited to hear about the relationship that he's formed with Aaron Rodgers here. But if you hit that notification bell here, you'll know when that episode pops up, when any of our other episodes pop up. So be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Again, one more time, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. Question for a future episode, all that good stuff. And then find us on all of our socials at Around the 412. You can find Tyler on his social at Weiler_Teach33. And then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Tyler Weeks and myself, thanks for watching another episode of the Around the 412 Steelers show. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.